Is that all you've got? Captain Zorith sneered as he looked down at the trembling, frail humans standing before him. The metallic walls of the spaceship hummed ominously, echoing the silence of 1,000 untold fates. His eyes, cold as the void of space, locked onto the Earthling, who couldn't even bring themselves to speak. Zoritha's species, the Zhyros, had come from a distant galaxy. Known for their advanced technology and unmatched power, they had conquered countless civilizations. Their ships flew at speeds that bent the very fabric of space, their weapons capable of disintegrating entire cities in the blink of an eye. They were feared across the stars, and yet here they were, on the precipice of annihilating a species so fragile, so beneath them. You Earthlings really are weak, Zorith continued, pacing slowly around the human, eyes never leaving their face. Your planets are pitiful, your technology laughable. Do you truly believe you stand a chance against the might of the Zhyros? The human raised their head, eyes full of defiance, though the tremor in their voice betrayed them. You've made a mistake. You're underestimating us. You may be powerful, but you don't understand. We're capable of more than you think. Zorith stopped in his tracks. More than what? Your kind can barely harness the power of your own planet's resources. You fight among yourselves. You can't even agree on how to run your own world. We have something you don't, the human said, their voice growing steadier, even though their body still shook. We have will. Zorith let out a mocking laugh, his voice a deep rumble in the room. He turned to his second-in-command, Vrax, who had been silently observing the interaction. Will? Zorith chuckled. What good is will when your species cannot even survive the harshness of your own environment? Vrax shrugged. Captain, we've heard reports. These humans may be weak, but their resilience is surprising. Perhaps we shouldn't be so quick to dismiss them. Zorith dismissed Vrax with a wave of his hand. You're overthinking this, Vrax. A single blow from our weapons, and Earth will be no more. Let's end this and move on to more worthy conquests. But as Zorith turned back to the human, a glint in their eyes caught his attention. Something different. There was something he hadn't noticed before. A determination, a quiet strength that seemed to defy all logic. You think this is just about will? About fighting back? No, the human said slowly, stepping forward, surprising Zorith by not cowering. You think you can just come in and take whatever you want, don't you? You think you're invincible? Well, you're wrong. Zoritha's amusement shifted slightly. And how exactly do you intend to stop me? You can barely comprehend the technology we wield. You can barely breathe the same air we do. The human smiled. We may not have your advanced weapons, but we have something even more powerful, something that you've clearly never faced before. We have each other. We have our minds. And we have something that will make you regret underestimating us. Zoritha's amusement faded, replaced by a flicker of curiosity. Explain, he demanded, though there was an edge of doubt in his voice. The human looked over at the crew of Zhyros soldiers standing in the background, all looking slightly more unsure now. You think you're the only ones who can evolve, right? But you're wrong. Humans have a way of surviving. We adapt. We find ways to fight back, even against the impossible. And in the end, it's not your technology or your weapons that will win. It's our spirit. The Zhyros captain was silent for a moment, his eyes narrowing. He turned to Vrax. Is there something we're missing here? Vrax's antennae twitched as he processed the situation. I don't know, Captain. There's something in the human's words that feels off. It's not just defiance. It's conviction. Zoritha's scorn returned. Conviction? How quaint. You'll find that conviction won't save you from the inevitable. Our fleet is already in position. Your world is as good as dust. The human's gaze never wavered. We'll see. But you should know one thing. It's not the Zhyros who will end us. It's you, who will regret underestimating us. Zorith laughed again. But this time, there was a strange unease that began to settle in his chest. He couldn't explain it, but something felt different about this encounter. The tension in the air was thick. The human's words had rattled Zorith more than he was willing to admit. He had faced many species, primitive, advanced, and everything in between. but he had never encountered one that seemed so confident despite their weaknesses. "I don't understand it, Captain," Vrax spoke quietly, his voice full of concern. "We have the most powerful weapons, the most advanced ships, and yet these humans, they speak as if they have something more." Zhyros glanced at his second-in-command, his face a mask of determination, though the flicker of doubt was still present in his mind. "We've conquered hundreds of planets, Vrax. What makes this one different?" He paced around, his footsteps echoing off the metal floors. "No matter what they think they have, Earth will fall. It's inevitable." "But Captain," Vrax hesitated, "they seem to be organizing, plotting. They've begun communicating across the planet in ways we didn't anticipate. It's almost as though they are ready." Zhyros stopped pacing, staring at the view of Earth's surface through the large observation windows. "What are you suggesting? That these humans will actually fight back and challenge us? Ridiculous." Just then, a low rumble sounded throughout the ship, sending a jolt through the entire structure. Zhyros' eyes widened in surprise. "What was that?" Vrax checked his systems. "Captain, I'm detecting a sudden surge of energy from the surface of Earth. It's growing rapidly. They found something. But what?" Below, on the surface of Earth, human leaders had secretly been working on an underground network. Their initial confusion, fear, and disarray after the Zhyros' arrival had quickly given way to unity and resolve. Through encrypted communications, humans from all walks of life, from scientists to engineers to everyday citizens, had begun collaborating in ways no one had ever expected. One of their most remarkable discoveries came when a group of astrophysicists realized something strange. The Zhyros had underestimated Earth's ability to harness natural energy. While they thought the planet was stuck in its primitive age, humans had been working on a revolutionary energy source, a power so vast that it could disrupt the Zhyros' technology. Dr. Lydia Harper, a brilliant scientist, was one of the masterminds behind the breakthrough. "It's all about potential," she had explained to the leaders of the global resistance. "We've always had the ability, but we never needed it. Until now." She gestured to the newly constructed facility that could harness the core energy of the Earth itself. "We can turn the planet into a weapon, not by using force, but by using the natural forces we've barely begun to understand." The moment was momentous. For the first time, humanity wasn't just reacting to the Zhyros' threats, they were preparing to strike back. Up in orbit, Zhyros was growing impatient. The humans had been quiet for too long, and he had expected them to submit, just like every other species had. But now, with every passing minute, there was a rising tension. Something wasn't right. "Vrax," Zhyros said, his voice tight, "I need you to send a message to Earth. A final warning. Tell them we'll annihilate them in the next 24 hours if they don't surrender." Before Vrax could respond, the ship shook again. This time, much harder. "Captain," Vrax shouted, his voice filled with urgency. "The humans, they've activated something. We're being pulled off course." The Zhyros ship lurched, and alarms blared throughout the vessel. Zhyros' mind raced as he tried to understand what was happening. Impossible. They don't have the capability to disrupt our ship systems. But they did. The surge of energy that had been detected earlier wasn't just some experiment. It was a weapon. A weapon powered by the very Earth itself. In that moment, Zhyros understood. The humans had not only adapted, they had evolved. They had unlocked the one thing the Zhyros had overlooked, the Earth's own latent energy. "Activate our shields. Now," Zhyros barked, but it was too late. The ship groaned as the energy pulled it further from its intended path, and the force of the disruption sent ripples through the entire fleet. Ships began to veer off course, unable to fight the sudden force. Back on Earth, the human resistance watched the chaos unfold on their screens. Dr. Harper stood at the front of a makeshift command center, her face illuminated by the glow of the data monitors. "It's working. We've done it," she whispered. Her colleagues exchanged looks of disbelief. "You're saying we've just stopped their entire fleet?" "It's not just stopping them," Dr. Harper replied, her voice growing more confident. "We've shown them that we understand how their systems work, that we can fight back. We've given them a taste of what's to come if they don't back off. And yet, Even as Zoratha's fleet struggled against the energy wave, something deep inside the alien captain began to shift. Fear. Fear that he had misjudged the humans entirely. Zorath stood at the command center, his hands gripping the edge of the control panel as he watched his fleet in disarray. Vrax stood beside him, silent for once. "Captain," Vrax said quietly, his voice laced with a tinge of uncertainty, "we underestimated them. We assumed they were weak, but they are resourceful. They have found a way to fight." Zoratha's jaw tightened, his pride wounded more deeply than he cared to admit. They should not have been able to do this. How could they have unlocked such potential? Vrax hesitated before speaking again. Perhaps they've had this power all along, just waiting for the right moment. Zorath looked at him, finally realizing the gravity of the situation. "What do we do now?" Vrax offered no easy answers. "We could destroy them. But this planet, this species, there's something different about them. Something we may not fully understand." The air in the command center felt heavier now. Zoratha's mind raced. "Perhaps we need to reconsider. We underestimated them, but maybe, just maybe, there is more to these humans than we thought." Back on Earth, the resistance forces were preparing for what would be the defining battle of humanity's survival. The Zhyros had learned that the energy they had so casually dismissed as primitive was now a weapon they couldn't ignore. Every move they made was met with a response they had not anticipated. They, the conquerors of countless civilizations, were now on the defensive. Dr. Lydia Harper stood in front of a large screen in the command center, her eyes focused on the data streams coming in from across the globe. The Earth's energy surge, which had initially thrown the Zhyros off course, was still in motion, expanding with each passing hour. "We've done it," she said softly to herself, more as a confirmation than a statement of victory. "But we need to hold the line." The ground forces were ready. They had been preparing for this day for months, learning how to channel the energy of the planet itself into weapons and shields. The human resistance wasn't just fighting to survive. They were fighting for their right to exist in a universe that had long overlooked them. But even in their preparations, there was a nagging feeling that something bigger was at play. Could the humans truly defeat the Zhyros? Or was this a momentary victory before the inevitable end? Meanwhile, high above the Earth, Zorath stood at the command center of the lead Zhyros ship. His mind was racing as he watched his forces struggle. His fleet was divided, and their systems were failing one by one. The humans' energy weapon had rendered the Zhyros technology almost useless. "What are you suggesting, Vrax?" Zorath asked, his voice a mixture of frustration and disbelief. "That we stop the invasion? That we admit defeat to these humans?" Vrax, his once proud demeanor subdued, nodded slowly. "Captain, these humans, they are not like the others we've encountered. They are resourceful. They think in ways we cannot understand. If we keep attacking, we may destroy them, but we will lose more of our own forces in the process. And this planet, it may be their only home, but it is their greatest weapon. If we continue, they will learn to use it against us in ways we cannot predict." Zoratha's anger flared. He had come so far, taken so much, and now he was being asked to retreat from a race of creatures he had once believed were beneath him. "Then what do we do?" he snapped, his fists clenched. "We must negotiate," Vrax said, with an almost reluctant calmness. "These humans are capable of things we've never imagined. If we do not offer them peace, we may face a war we cannot win." As the Zhyros finally made contact with Earth's leaders, the tension on both sides was palpable. Humanity had already proven that it could fight back, but the question now was whether they would choose peace or continue the struggle. Dr. Harper and President Elena Mason were both present at the diplomatic table, surrounded by the brightest minds humanity had to offer. On the other side of the communication channel, Zorath and Vrax stared at them from their ship, both alien figures appearing cold, calculating, and wary. Zoratha's voice echoed through the communication screen. "We have come to offer you peace," he said, his tone stark. "We have underestimated you, and for that, we apologize. Your resilience is unlike anything we've encountered before." President Mason didn't flinch. "You didn't just underestimate us, Zorath. You thought we were weak. You thought we could be wiped out with a flick of your finger." Zoratha's eyes narrowed. I do not expect you to forgive us, but we are willing to negotiate. What do you want, humans? What do you need? The silence that followed felt like an eternity. The fate of humanity hung in the balance. Dr. Harper stepped forward. We need your fleet to leave our planet. We need you to leave Earth and never return. But more than that, we need you to recognize that humans are not your playthings. We are not here to be conquered. Zorath hesitated. He could see the fire in their eyes, the courage that had driven them to this point. These were not the same fearful humans he had encountered days before. What makes you think we'll comply with your terms? Zorath asked, though there was a tinge of doubt creeping into his voice. What if we refuse? President Mason's voice was unwavering. Then we will use everything we have left, and you will regret ever setting foot on this planet. For a moment, Zorath said nothing. But as he looked into the faces of the humans before him, so small, so fragile, and yet so incredibly determined, he realized something. The humans had not only survived the invasion, they had adapted and turned their greatest weakness into their greatest strength. Very well, Zorath said slowly. We will leave Earth. But understand this, humans. We will not forget this. You have proven that you are not to be underestimated. With that, the communication channel was closed, and the Zhyros fleet began to retreat from Earth's orbit. Weeks passed after the Zhyros left. Earth, battered but not broken, slowly began to heal. The resistance forces, once scattered and fragmented, were now united under a common cause, rebuilding the planet and learning from the mistakes of the past. The world's leaders met, and the lesson was clear. Humanity had faced extinction and come out victorious, not through superior technology, but through resilience, unity, and sheer will. Dr. Harper, once a scientist focused on her research, became an advisor to the newly formed global government. She often spoke about the potential for Earth to grow beyond its own limitations, not just in technology, but in spirit. We've seen what we can do when we fight together, she said at a global summit. And now we have the chance to build a future where we don't need to fight to survive. President Mason, too, reflected on the changes. The Zhyros thought they could crush us. They thought we were just another species to conquer. But we showed them that we are more than just survivors. We are thinkers, creators, dreamers. And no one can take that away from us. The skies over Earth were clear once more. The remnants of the Zhyros fleet were gone, leaving only the promise of a new beginning. Humanity had proven something that day, not just to the Zhyros, but to themselves. They had made their enemies regret underestimating them, and in doing so, had proven that the most powerful force in the universe was not technology or weapons, but the unyielding spirit of the human race. And so, humanity's legacy began anew. A legacy built not on conquest, but on resilience, on hope, and on the belief that no matter the odds, no matter the threats, they would never, ever give up.